guys, welcome back to another What's for Dinner video. If you're new here, I do upload these every single Sunday, so make sure you're subscribed if you don't want to miss out. I do lots of simple meals, budget friendly, all very family friendly. I do have a toddler and he really enjoys almost all of my cooking, so if you are interested, make sure you hit the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and let's go ahead and get into this week's meals. To start off the week, I am making some baked spaghetti. We love this meal and it's super easy. It's really similar to a lasagna, except for you're using spaghetti noodles instead of lasagna noodles. It's a little bit easier because you don't have to do as many layers like you would a lasagna, but it tastes about the same and it's just really easy. So if you've never tried this one before and you like lasagna, this is a recipe you're going to want to try. So here I am just chopping up one whole yellow onion and I'm throwing that into a pot with a pound of lean ground beef. So here's the ground beef that I like to use. I always use just a really lean ground beef. Ours is grass-fed and I feel like it makes it even more lean. I think it's like 93% or something. It might even be higher than that, but it's really nice and lean, so most of the time I don't even need to drain it. But I'm just browning that up, and then I'm also putting on a pot of water to start getting that to boil because we are going to be obviously making noodles for that. And then I'm also preheating my oven to 350 degrees while I'm getting everything going. After you've got your noodles boiling and those are started, go ahead and start working on your sauce. Once your ground beef is all the way done, I am just adding in a little bit of garlic powder, some salt and pepper, just like always. These are like my classic seasonings that I add to everything. And then for this sauce, I'm adding two different types. I did one jar of tomato, basil, and garlic, and then I did one of the flavored meat sauce. And then I'm just stirring that up. That's all that I did for this sauce. I will say that I like to have a little bit more sauce and less meat in ours. It just goes a little bit farther, and that is how we prefer it. And then in a separate little bowl, you're gonna crack in 2 eggs, and you'll also be adding in some Parmesan cheese. I'm not 100% sure how much I added. I would say probably like maybe a quarter of a cup, and then you're just gonna whisk that together. This is gonna go on our noodles when they are all the way done. This is basically going to coat our noodles so they don't get so dried out, and it just adds a little bit of extra flavor. And then I did go ahead and add a little bit of seasoning. I just did some garlic powder and then some salt and pepper along with a little bit of parsley. Mix that all up and then set that aside for when the noodles are all done. You're just going to go ahead and coat your noodles in this really, really well. When your noodles are all the way done, you're going to add in a couple tablespoons of butter. I think I did about 3 tablespoons. And then I also did probably like 3 or 4 tablespoons of cream cheese. And you're just going to coat the noodles in this. Try and get it well distributed and like melted in. And then once that's melted in, you can go ahead and add that egg mixture right on top and make sure everything is really well coated and everything. So now this is where you're just gonna layer it similar to how you would a lasagna. I'm just starting off with a little bit of sauce on the bottom, and this is gonna be in 2 layers. So I'm doing half of the noodles right to start off, and then you're gonna top it with sauce, some cottage cheese, and then I used mozzarella cheese. You're just gonna layer everything in there. There's not really any like certain method, certain order. You just wanna get everything in the pan. And I'm not even 100% sure on amounts, you guys. I did have some sauce left over and I just popped that into my freezer for if I wanna make spaghetti later on or something. I would say I used like a couple cups of cottage cheese total. Probably a couple cups of mozzarella cheese, and you're just kind of going to layer everything in here really nice and easy. And then you're just going to cover this up with tin foil and pop it into a 350-degree oven for, I think mine took about 40-45 minutes, but just until everything is nice and warm and the cheese is all melted. The next meal that I'm making is just some sloppy joes, and then I did some cheesy mashed potatoes on the side with some broccoli. This was a super easy recipe, and we eat sloppy joes all the time. It's super simple. I'm just starting off by cutting up 1 large onion. I think my recipe only calls for 1/2 of an onion, so you can use what you want. I would say if you're not like a big onion person, just use 1/2, and this is just a yellow onion. Throw that into your pot with some ground beef. You guys, I always use onion in all of my cooking. I feel like this is how almost all of my recipes start, but it just adds so much yummy flavor. Normally when I make sloppy joes, I do 2 pounds of it. So I actually have the recipe for what we had for dinner this night. I will have this recipe typed out in the description box. I've been using it for years, so I don't even know where I originally got it. I've kind of tweaked it over the years and made it my own. So I'm just using 1 pound of lean ground beef, and I will have the whole recipe listed out down below. But this is all pretty much made with ingredients that you probably already have. I'm doing about 1/8 of a cup of brown sugar. I did 1/4 cup of barbecue sauce, and then I'm also doing 1/4 cup of ketchup. My recipe also calls for 3/4 of a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. You're going to need about 1 heaping tablespoon of yellow mustard. Don't worry, it's not super strong flavored, so if you don't like mustard, that's totally fine. And then it also calls for about 1/2 a can of tomato sauce. If you're using 2 pounds of ground beef, you're obviously going to use the whole can, but I was just using 1/2 a can because that's all that I was using on this night. And then I did add in just a little bit of extra salt, pepper, and garlic powder, and then I just let this simmer on the stove for about 20 minutes. This is also something that you can throw in your crock pot if you want, or even the Instant Pot, and just kind of let it simmer that way. And then to go with our sloppy joes, I am just making some cheesy garlic mashed potatoes. I boiled about 4 potatoes, give or take. I just used russets because that's what I had on hand. And then I'm just adding a couple big scoops of sour cream. I added a little bit of butter, just like I always do. And then I seasoned them with salt, pepper, and quite a bit of garlic powder, and mix those all up together with some warm milk. And then I did add in a little bit of shredded cheese. I've made these before, but it's just a super simple and easy recipe for some cheesy garlic mashed potatoes. I did transfer mine into a microwave safe bowl, and I warmed them up a little bit just before eating, just because they always tend to cool off a little bit once they're all mashed. I always think you need to warm up mashed potatoes a little bit in the microwave just to make sure they're nice and warm. And then these are the rolls that I used for our sloppy joes. I really like them. They're the brioche buns, and they were just really tasty. I decided to put a little bit of butter on top, and then I just threw them in our air fryer for a few minutes to just toast them a little bit, and that is how I served our sloppy joes. So this next recipe is actually going to be barbecue mac and cheese. And yes, I know it sounds a little bit different, but I promise you it is so delicious. I'm just starting off by doing a whole box of these rotini noodles and cooking those in some boiling water. And then in my other pan, I am going to be melting down about 4 tablespoons of butter and just letting that melt all the way. So this is actually an old HelloFresh recipe that I've kind of tweaked a little bit. The original recipe was pulled pork mac and cheese, but we're actually going to be using the leftover sloppy Joe mix to make the meal go a little bit further. So once your butter has melted, you're going to be adding in about 3.5 tablespoons of flour. You'll see me add a little bit extra here. That was just the half tablespoon, but you're just going to let all of that cook together. And then I did like to season my roux with a little bit of salt and pepper. Once your roux has cooked together for a little bit, you're going to be adding in about 2 cups of milk. If you've ever done a roux before, you know you kind of want to gradually add the milk in until it's like a nice thick consistency. And then before you drain off your noodles, make sure you pull out probably about half a cup of that pasta water. We're going to be using this in the sauce later on. So just get that set aside and then go ahead and drain off all of your noodles. And then once your roux is nice and thick, you're going to be adding in about half a block of cream cheese. I think that's 4 ounces if I remember right. I think a normal block is 8 ounces. So you're just going to add that in, and then you're also going to be adding in some shredded cheese. I like to do probably about 1.5 cups of this Colby and Monterey Jack cheese. That's just my favorite blend. And then you'll also be adding in that pasta water and just melting all of that together. And then once your sauce is all melted and cooked together, you're just going to be adding back in your noodles, add all of those in, and then you're also going to be adding your sloppy Joe mix. This is probably about half, so I had probably half a pound of meat, and then I'm adding in some barbecue sauce, and this is the point where you can kind of make it your own. You can add a little bit more barbecue sauce or a little bit less. You can add some salt and pepper, that's what I do, or you can add in some totally different seasonings if you like, but this is a really good way to make that meat stretch a little bit. I know a lot of us are trying to be super conservative right now, and I am all about tweaking leftovers to make a whole new meal and making that meat stretch a little bit farther. This next recipe is chicken taco chili, which is super delicious, and it's also a crock pot meal, which I love. I'm just spraying my crock pot with a little bit of olive oil, and then I'm adding in 2 large chicken breasts. Mine were frozen, and it was totally fine. You can either use fresh or frozen. And then to put in it, you're going to need a can of black beans, a can of kidney beans, and you're also going to need a can of corn. Get all of those drained off, and then you're going to dump them right into your crock pot. And then you'll also be adding in 2 cans of petite diced tomatoes. This is a great pantry staple meal because it's using mostly all canned items that you probably already have in your pantry. And then I am adding in 1.5 cans of tomato sauce. You can add 2 cans if you want. I just had a half a can left over my fridge, so that's what you see me adding here. And then you'll also be adding in 1 whole onion. For seasonings, I'm just adding in 1 tablespoon of chili powder and then a whole packet of this taco seasoning mix. That is where the taco part of this chili comes in. And then I did do a little bit of garlic powder as well as some salt and pepper. All of my canned goods were no salt added, so if you have salt in yours, you may not need to add that. And then I just cooked this on high for about 4 to 5 hours until the chicken was cooked all the way through. I shredded it up, and the first night I just served it with a little bit of shredded cheese on top. It was super delicious, and I was able to turn the leftovers into a couple of different meals, which you are about to see. So the next night, I actually decided to make some chicken chili nachos, and they were super delicious. I just preheated our oven to 400 degrees, and then I took our tortilla chips and added quite a few of those onto a baking pan. You guys know I love revamping leftovers, and this is just one of my favorite ways to do it. We love doing nachos. It's a super yummy meal, not the healthiest, but we all really like it. I just warmed up a little bit of that chili mixture and spread it right on top of the nachos, and then I added a little bit of cheese, and all I had to do was bake this in the oven for about 10 minutes, and we had a super yummy and delicious meal. I just served our nachos with a little bit of sour cream on top just because that's all that we had on hand, but you could definitely do some shredded lettuce and some tomatoes, some black olives would be delicious, but we just didn't have a lot of fresh produce this time, so that is all that we had on our nachos, but they were super delicious. And then the next night we were still using up some leftovers, so we had that same chicken taco chili, but this time I served it over rice for something a little bit different. I am just trying to make everything stretch as much as possible right now, so adding a simple carb like that really helps. So I'm just cooking up some rice, and I served it over rice with a little bit of shredded cheese, and we really enjoyed it. It was really delicious, and I felt like we had something different every single night, even though it was the same main meal. Well, that is it for this What's for Dinner video. I hope that you enjoyed it and that it gave you some meal ideas and inspiration for your week. Go ahead and hit that little subscribe button if you have not already. Give this video a thumbs up, and also let me know down in the comments what you are eating and what is on your meal plan for this week. But that is it for this What's for Dinner video, and I will see you guys next time. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.